Let's get the question right out of the way from the start, Clay. This episode is extremely similar to Aliens, the James Cameron directed action movie, just because people are stuck in goo and stuck on walls. Is this episode better or worse than Aliens, the movie?
I think they take a much more measured approach to the Alien. So I think it's a difference of opinion where, you know, you could go in guns blazing, or you can sit around and watch people literally translate a language from scratch for 40 minutes.
We're going to be talking about Vox Sola, which is, I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts. I think at this point I'm sinking into like an Enterprise state of mind, I suppose, where I can really get into the minutia of which episodes are working and which ones aren't, which isn't to spoil anything about this one. But I think that this one's a combination of a whole bunch of stuff that works and doesn't work. So with that incredibly bland generalization, we're going to take a break. We're going to play a clip from the episode, and then we'll come back and we'll break down Vox.
We have incredibly high standards, but we only are hard on you because we know that you can meet them.
Well, I need that cold analytical approach to really motivate me to move forward here. So let's get into Hoshi repeating her storyline for the 17th time this season, and let's break down Vox Sola right after this.
This thing appears to be growing. There's no telling if it'll get out of the cargo bay. I recommend we evacuate the entire deck.
How did it get on board?
The last time we opened the airlock, we were docked with the Cretaceans.
You think they left us a little souvenir?
Our encounter didn't go well, but I doubt we gave them reason to attack us. We're not even certain that the organism's hostile.
You didn't see that thing go after the captain. It seemed hostile enough to me.
The Cretaceans might know something about this thing. I can start scanning for their ship, try to pick up their warp trail.
All right, so Vox Sola is a good title. It's the 22nd episode of the first season of Star Trek Enterprise, aired on May 1st, 2002. Teleplay goes to Fred Decker. Story credit goes to Rick Berman, Brandon Braga, and Fred Decker. Directed by Roxanne Dawson, B'Elanna from Voyager. In-universe date is 2151, maybe 2152. This might have crossed the new year. In this episode, a symbiotic alien comes aboard the Enterprise and captures several of the starship's officers in its web. Hoshi struggles to communicate with the alien invader in an attempt to save the trapped officers. What I like about this episode, Clay, and that I wish the show had done more of, and I wish all Star Trek shows kind of captured this and understood that why this was an effective thing. I think it's early for good characterization and settling what the characters are about to have episodes that work the group through a problem. And I think that this episode, for all of its other problems, is pretty good at that. It's probably the most ensemble-y of all the episodes of the first season, I think, because everyone has something to do. You could argue a lot of the stuff that people have to do is kind of stupid and pointless, but they're still doing something throughout the episode. So I do like this one just for that. It felt different from the other episodes. And Roxanne Dawson is actually a very good Star Trek director. She's probably in the Avery Brooks thing, where I think she might be a better director than a actor.
Is she the Klingon on Voyager?
half Klingon. Yeah. She's really good. I noticed the direction in this one. It's really good, and it looks very cinematic and stuff like that. But yeah, what'd you think about Vox Sola?
You know, I was looking it up on IMDb because I wanted to check the cast, because the woman who plays Crewman Kelly is actually Angelica Schuyler from Hamilton, which I watched over the weekend, like the rest of the universe. And I saw that it only has like a 6.8 or 6.9, which is generally the mark of a bad episode. And for a show like this, where a lot of them seem to be like 7s and stuff, it's usually the mark of a really not good episode. I really liked this episode for the most part. I think it's like you said, I think it's a mix of a lot of the stuff they do really well and some stuff that they don't do so well. But as far as using all your characters and actually putting them in scenes where you have differences of opinions clashing with each other in order to solve a problem, this is like the most successful episode they've done the entire season.
I'd agree.
Like the scene with Reed and Phlox felt like an actual scene, because you've got two people of differing viewpoints about what to do about this, weird jizz dildo monster.
Torture the monster or don't torture the monster.
And they actually had a conversation that was not completely arbitrary about how to approach this issue from two different sides of the spectrum. And I thought that stuff was great. I thought the monster was considerably creepy. I don't know if it needed the stuff with the. I don't remember the name of the aliens who think eating is the same as mating, but
the Cretaceans, something like that. Cretaceans.
Sure. That stuff was whatever, but I did, and I liked that it was a story about even though, like you said, they've done it a bunch of times already, but Hoshi failing and then ultimately being the person who manages to come through in the end. Instead of blasting this thing away, she actually learns how to communicate with it, and they come to a real Star Trek solution to it. I thought it was really good. I thought it was great.
Force field porn, a lot of good force field use, inventing the force field here. Yeah,
it's one of those stupid things where it wasn't the force field that I was thinking about. It was, for some reason, I think maybe it was either just before the force field or just after. I don't remember why this popped into my head, but I was thinking, I think an inherent problem with this show is what they're trying to do is why would they not have phasers equipped on ships, but they would have handheld phasers? Because you would think that the way that technology works is they make a big one first,
right,
and then they miniaturize it into a handheld version. So technically you'd think that all the ships would already have, and then my eyes went cross-eyed, and then I just remembered that I'm watching an episode that doesn't matter.
They only have 14 or something. They have a limited number of phasers that they can use, so they're kind of a rare device. I think this episode actually starts stronger than it ends, but I think it's because I think there's what's really kind of interesting about it is that I think that it has a lot of good storylines in it, but none of them really have a good resolution to anything that they do. Sure. So it's almost like it's overstuffed with stuff, but that's because they need all of the characters to do things. However, I don't think that any of the resolutions are satisfying. Like, I don't think that the way that Hoshi solves her language thing is good because it's just her typing into a computer. She figures it out. I don't really like the Reed and Phlox thing because it's a good scene, but it ultimately is like, it makes sense within the story, but it doesn't feel like the episode is really built around any kind of conflict around this. Right, it's just a minor thing that happens on their way. Mayweather solving the problem and apologizing to those aliens feels like a big letdown. That's very strange. I don't know.
That came out of absolutely nowhere.
He's the only character left who didn't have anything to do, so he had to be the one that apologizes.
I didn't even remember if they asked him to do that or if on his own he was like, maybe we should call those guys up and ask them if they know anything about this weird monster that came off of their ship.
Those aliens are like, you're disgusting. You eat like you make love. And Mayweather's like, well, how do you guys eat? I was like, please don't describe how you guys... I don't want to know what you guys do to eat. Apparently they only eat in private or something like that. But I was expecting a much more grotesque and graphic description of how they actually ingest food.
Also, thankfully, they learned English while they were off screen. Otherwise, what was he going to do if he calls them up and then they just start screaming at him in
Cretacean
or whatever it is?
Yeah, no, that's kind of my problem with the whole thing is that I really like the setup and I like the whole structure of it and I like the concept and I like all the plots that are in it. But at the end, you're really just like, ooh, like... The plots all ended up at like a 6 out of 10 zone where I thought they were going to be a little bit stronger than that. So I think and because they all do that, I think that it feels like a bigger letdown by the end of it than it actually is, just because not a single plot really sticks for me.
Yeah, I think actually where the story is hampered is actually in the middle, because they get to a certain point where they've established what's going on. They've established the kind of groupings that they're dealing with as far as who are approaching it from what angles, but they never really move those anywhere. So, you know what I mean? There's no drama uptick. So you get to the middle of the story and you've already done your scene where T'Pol and Hoshi are trying to decipher this language and they have their talk or whatever about math and some shit. And then the next time you come back to them, they just have the same conversation. They don't. It's just more of the same, and that kind of happens all around. Like
same with Archer and Trip, where they get linked together, but it doesn't mean anything. There's no development. It's because I think the problem there is because there's so many stories. They didn't settle on one was going to be the story that everything that the episode focuses around. So you just have this. you just have this thing where all the stories kind of feel like B plots, where there doesn't really need to be a central conflict there, and it really weakens a lot of them. And I think that's the problem. Yeah.
Like imagine if instead of just talking about how they all have the same college water polo memories now,
but they're watching water polo from like 1987. It's such a weird game that it's not like it's modern water polo. It was filmed on like NTSC, 4x3 television sets.
I was thinking that too, but I was like, well, they just got it downloaded by Subspace Communications. Maybe it looks like news footage from 1992. I don't know.
It's going to your neighbor's house and trying to unscramble their porn channel or something, and just like I think I see something there.
I'm willing to give that a pass that it's not pristine 4K HD. But like they set up Archer in a way that doesn't pay off in this episode either. I think he's the biggest element that they forgot about, because they set him up as being in this particular mood.
Is he depressed because of how the meeting with the Cretaceans went?
That's what I guess. But even there, I was like, why the fuck is he so? Why? Why is this such a big deal? I mean, I guess because it's a failed first contactor, but they never really talk about it. And if you positioned Trip and Archer together, where Trip is trying to understand, one of them is trying to understand the other, and it's not really working. And then you get to the situation later where they're hooked up by their minds, and then they come to an understanding, because now I can see what you were thinking and why this was such a big deal. Then that stuff feels like it actually has some narrative weight to it, instead of just being these guys are wrapped up. Like crewman Kelly is literally unconscious for the entire episode.
Yeah.
Like there's not really anything happening in those scenes that really are moving the story along. And I think other than the fact that I guess it's implying that this creature has some sort of like, is part of a larger neural network or something. I'm not even sure what the point of adding that stuff in is. But yeah, I think it all falls into this middle of the episode trap, where they just don't have they have their setup and they have their ending, but the middle part just doesn't have anything to really keep the story chugging along. Yeah,
that's a good point. Because I would have liked the ending a little bit more if the resolution to get there was more impactful, which is a problem with the middle. It's just that you don't really spend a lot of time doing anything with any of the characters. It's funny because it does feel like it's going to be an Archer episode with all that setup of him and Trip hanging out and having a good old time. But it would be better served if you're saying that is almost like you started with kind of like a rift or something between the two, like the two good friends who have been out on this mission for 6 months now are starting to like wear on each other a little bit or something like that. And then at the end, the thing is that because of the link, Trip realizes what's important to Archer, and he downloads this VHS water polo match from 1976.
Yeah,
and he shows it to him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the fact that they didn't lean into that, and even though it is more of a Hoshi story, she really is also given about equal time as everybody else, so you don't even really feel like it's a Hoshi story.
I don't think it is. It's funny that they focus on it in the blurb that I read at the top, because I wouldn't say this is a Hoshi story, really. I think
traditionally it is, because it opens with her failing at her job and feeling despondent about it, and then the ship gets into a situation where the only way for them to get out is for her to do her job correctly.
Yeah,
and be the one who saves the day. But she is given.
They all have that problem. Yeah,
her plot line is given equal time essentially with everything else, so it never feels really like all of the onus is on her.
Yeah,
and they don't spend the time with her to get more character stuff out of her, other than a couple scenes with T'Pol, which were pretty good, but at the same they were pretty good, but they did feel a little bit forced to me, because I have never really gotten the feeling that T'Pol is exceptionally hard on Hoshi, or doesn't. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it seems like Hoshi overreacting.
Overreact
based on that the plot needs her to. Because even like in the episode, T'Pol is just kind of like, I I don't know. I don't know why you're so mad. I'm just asking.
This was my favorite T'Pol performance because
Yeah,
here
it was
in this
great,
one,
yeah.
she felt most like a Vulcan who is not intending offense or is not intending to be
Right.
sort of cruel to someone. She's just like, T'Pol's just like, well, hopefully you do better next time. And Hoshi's like, well, what the fuck does that mean? She's like, well, I hope for your personal development, you actually do better next time.
Right,
And it's that kind of a thing. It's like, it's not the cattiness that T'Pol had earlier, which I think is kind of it's an issue for me more than it was for you. But here, I much prefer, if you were to reestablish this from the start, that Hoshi is overreactive to T'Pol in a way like you ever had those, those people who are in relationships where, not in a relationship, but just like two people who know each other. Sometimes a relationship goes in a way where a perceived slight is never like reconciled. So every time those people interact in the future, there's this little bit of tension because someone thinks that their subtext is like they're reading into something that isn't actually there, and it sort of builds up this thing. I would have liked that for Hoshi.
It's like why your kids will never look you in the eye.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's why and if you were to recalibrate this a little bit to have those characters, the human characters, be a little bit more, quote unquote, troubled in this series, I think Hoshi being insecure and overly sensitive to that stuff kind of works as a character for her. And T'Pol is the perfect person to set that off against her because T'Pol's emotional cruelty, quote unquote, again, is something that would annoy Hoshi. And I like it here. I just feel that, again, it's another thing of Mayweather's the boomer and Hoshi is just insecure about her job. I just feel like they could do something else with these characters at this point. I get those tropes. I get those beats.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think not really choosing to go one way or the other is ultimately what ends up hurting it the most. Because like, do we really need to see Reed triangulating or tuning the force field?
Yeah.
No.
I was so stupid. I didn't even realize what they were like. The force field is funny because what they do is so simple. It's just to stop the tentacles from getting them. That I was like, why do they need the force field? Like I was thinking that there was some sort of galaxy brain thing going on. That was like, well, what are they going to do? Like beam the thing out of there with the force field or something? But no, it's just so that the tentacles can't touch them.
Yeah, that was a little strange because I was thinking the same things. Like, what the fuck are they going to use this thing for? I also want to know what was on the other side of that thing that the crewman there just blasted with the first time he tested it with the phaser and just shot right through it. Hopefully there wasn't a guy on the other side of there. But yeah, like I think there's some probably wasted time doing some of that stuff where it's like, well, if you picked more forcefully what you're trying to do with your characters, it might not feel like you're just sort of running in place here literally watching people build a force field or literally watching people
type the language in.
Yeah, type a language or do algebra or whatever they're doing. Like as much as I love them finding other ways to solve these problems other than shooting them or, blowing them up or whatever, when Hoshi's like, I don't know, I think I just need to do some math in real time while we're watching this episode. And I was like, oh, you're going from deciphering a language and adding in, we need someone who understands higher math so we can start talking about numbers. And I was just dreading that they were going to start doing the modern thing where they're like, oh, so this frequency comes in at 6.7. If we multiply that by 14 and the root of 76. And I was just like, oh, please don't start doing that. Thankfully they didn't. And they did the old style thing where they just used it as an excuse to have a character conversation.
Yes. Yeah. Do you, I was kind of wondering, well, I really like the structure
and
of this.
If you're wondering, that math does check out. Checks out.
Do the, what is that math website? Never mind. I'm not going to be able to remember something Optimus Prime or something. I like the structure of this one in that all of the crew members or the cast members get something to do in it, which I think is the strongest point of it, as I said from the start. I feel that maybe it was kind of a mistake to give everyone a story. Like, if you want to consider this a story, I liked them all interacting about the problem. And I agree that you need something there to cause them to have a little bit of conflict with each other, like the Phlox and the Reed thing. However, I was wondering if it was just too much story overload, where
Yeah.
Instead of just having them kind of focus and interact based around this one problem that they're having and have Hoshi's story be the main thing where she gains her confidence and solves the problem or whatever. If you went the other way with it and just had them sort of be subjugated to that story, but at the same time, that probably, in my opinion, probably wouldn't give you the strong like ensemble feeling that it gives here. So I was kind of torn about it because the fact that it creates such an ensemble feeling is a positive, but at the same time, I don't feel like everyone needed a story here, like this level of story, which is not going to be resolved. I don't really know if you can reconcile those two things though.
Yeah, I think the stuff with Phlox and Reed still works if you only relegate it to a single scene or maybe a shorter second scene or something. Like I think the setup for that stuff is strong enough in the context of everything else that's going on that you can just have those short scenes to get across those point of view differences, and not have to spend too much time on it because it's just sort of like in that way it's just sort of an element bolstering everything else that's happening instead of like an equal time story that they're doing. Because it's not like Reed comes to any change of heart or anything at the end of that, it's like it's, I guess, technically creating a force field instead of actively destroying something is a change of heart for him. But like they don't focus on that stuff with either of them, Phlox or Reed, enough for it to be like, oh, this was worth spending an equal quarter of time on.
Would you agree or disagree that Reed is the worst character on this show to this point?
I think he is. I don't know if I would say the worst.
In my opinion, my argument would be it's either Mayweather or him, right? So it's those two.
Yeah.
But
I would say
Mayweather,
worst, as in most untapped potential, I guess. Mayweather, they don't know what the hell they're doing with him at all. He's just, just there.
That's the thing. Mayweather is just kind of there, but I feel like I feel like they're not making missteps with Mayweather. It's just that he doesn't do anything really. With
you
Reed,
can't make a misstep if you don't take a step.
Right. Exactly. He's making 100% of the shots he never took or whatever.
Exactly.
Yes, so, Reed is different. I think that Reed is like kind of fundamentally unclear as a character as to what he's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And the actor who plays him, Dominic, whatever his name is, I think when he's asked to play security chief, like when he's clearly the security chief, it comes across almost like a Naked Gun parody or something. Like he runs into the room with like his phaser up and he's kind of spinning around and being very dramatic about it. And I don't think he's the right actor for it. Or if he's the right actor for the role, I think they need to rewrite the role a little bit because I think they need to go harder on he doesn't give a fuck about life. He's just there to protect the ship kind of thing. And they touch on it a little bit, but he's still he's not gruff enough for it, really. Like his characterization is kind of the rich English naval officer's son. Kind of flies in the face with what I think they want him to be as a character.
Yeah, I'm still disappointed that they didn't go more like Johnny Rico from Starship Troopers with him.
Yeah.
Is it Johnny Rico? It's Rico. I can't
remember.
It's
Rico,
yeah. Yeah. Like to have someone in a Star Trek show who is in charge of the security and weapons, who is a more militaristic character, would just be such a great addition, especially when you're trying to hack out this new quote unquote new world and establish this new Star Trek way of doing things. It really shocks me that they don't have a character who's more steeped in what they're pushing back against. Yeah. And and because I mean, as it stands, he's honestly, if I watched 3 episodes of this show randomly, not including the pilot, if I hadn't watched the pilot and just picked 3 episodes, I don't think I could tell you what he does.
Right. That is the security chief, you mean?
Yeah. I assumed he was a science officer or something.
Yeah. Or an engineer. He seems very engineer-y because he builds a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, he seems a lot more like an engineer. To be fair, I don't even know if I could tell you what Trip does either. But he at least has scenes in the engine room.
Right, where he's touching the engine occasionally, so you know that he's the engineer. Yeah. Yeah, they I was thinking that about their ranks. I'm very unclear as to what the ranks are in this, although a little bit of trivia.
No, I have no idea. Yeah.
This is the first apparently in episode confirmation that T'Pol is the second officer of this ship, which I think you can assume safely, but this is the first time it's ever been confirmed that that's the case.
That's actually really interesting. I feel like we may have said this previously on a different show, but this is the first Star Trek show I can think of where I couldn't tell you what the ranks are of the principal characters.
Yeah.
Because
I have to think about it. It's not part of their name for me. I have to be like, he's an ensign. He's a commander. Yeah.
Like if you think of TNG, it's all kind of baked into the characters.
Yep. It's their name, part of their name. Lieutenant Worf, Lieutenant Commander Data. Yeah.
Yeah. When this one, it's just sort of like they're just kind of there, and they don't say them very often. At least in TNG, Picard would address people by their rank fairly often.
Well, yeah, Archer's a little bit too friendly for that.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't. It also, we've complained about that, not complained, but we've mentioned that in Discovery too, where the I kind of miss the chain of command structure to how they interact with each other, because here it feels like anybody can talk to anybody at any time about anything, and TNG, Mayweather as an ensign, there would be kind of a flow of like conversation there where they would tell the thing to Riker and Riker tells Picard. And you could say that maybe it's a little bit of a clunky narrative thing, but it does imbue this sense of like there's a kind of military tradition going on here. It's not just Mayweather can't just call Archer Jonathan and like high five him after they do something. You know, there's a little bit of like a respectful thing, but Archer isn't really that captain either. Yeah. So I think it works in this series. Maybe more than it does some of the others because of the timing of it, but it is something that I miss in some ways.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's a negative. Because I mean that shit doesn't ranks and stuff doesn't matter if your
narratively it doesn't matter.
Yeah, narratively it doesn't matter, and if your characters are strong enough, who cares what their ranks are? It doesn't really matter. But because like you say, it's not that sort of chain of command is not baked into this show, so it doesn't surprise me that they're not really leaning into it that much. But yeah, I do feel like Mayweather and Reed are definitely at the bottom of the list. And the only thing saving Mayweather is because they have had him do things that show you some semblance of what he's about. Pineapple aside.
That's Reed. That's Reed. Are you talking about Reed or Mayweather?
I'm talking about Reed. Sorry.
Okay. Yep.
Reed is only saved by the fact that they have done some stuff with him and put him in some situations to give you an idea. But even there, it's like it's not consistent enough or strong enough to really make an impression.
Yeah.
And Mayweather, man, they should have made him the time cop. It would have been so good.
It's fun. I've mentioned it before. I don't think he's a bad actor. I'm just surprised that they couldn't pivot the character to do something. He seems fine.
I was kind of hoping. Do you remember that commercial for online poker? I think it was, or maybe it wasn't a commercial for online poker, but the commercial was a guy sitting in his basement alone in the dark playing online poker, and then he wins, and he goes, "I won. I'm a winner," and he like celebrates, and he looks around and there's nobody there to celebrate because he's just by himself playing poker in his basement. I was kind of hoping for something like that in the scene where Mayweather talks to the God, what the hell?
Kreetassin, I think.
Kreetassins.
Yeah.
Where afterwards he kind of like looks around and he's like, "Holy shit. Nobody saw me do that."
He shuts off the view screen, stands up and just kind of like gingerly sits down in the captain's chair, and it's just like feels a lot better now.
Like he shuts it down, and then he like kind of does like a stretch thing, like, and then he's like, "Computer, I want that footage, computer."
Save that personal log. Yeah, I think that's pretty.
Send that footage back to my mom.
Can't find her. She's out on the freighter, whatever. Outside of this, I like the alien setup. It doesn't really do anything with it. Like all of the problems, it's kind of interesting. Like all the plot threads and all the stuff are all kind of the same problem for me in this episode, which is, again, I like this episode as well. I think this is probably my third favorite of the season so far after Unexpected and Dear Doctor. It felt different in a kind of a novel, exciting way, like an interesting way that they were going to do something with it. And I wish that maybe the alien had tied into it a little bit more. I wish that the Kreetassins hadn't been such a strange interaction, although back on the second and third episode of this season, would we have liked the Cretacean interaction more? We would have been like, what a novel Star Trek thing to have them just like make a mistake about how this guy eats and whether or not you should eat in front of an alien species.
I don't know. Cause like, I don't dislike it in concept, I guess. It just didn't really mean anything ultimately.
Yeah.
Cause I mean, you could do that. If you do that and then that mix-up becomes, and the consequences of that mix-up become the narrative thread that you're following into this other story with the monster, it's fine, but they don't really do that.
Yeah, because thematically it works about misunderstandings, right? Mm-hmm. So if the alien is the thing that allows people to truly understand each other because of this neural link, that's the theme, I think, that works there. But that the alien does that, but it doesn't have any bearing on the actual plot. It's just kind of a weird side effect that they have from it. And, it's another, like, what if a Cretacean had been sucked up by this alien, right? And then Archer was like, oh, we ate in front of them. That's why you were so upset. And it's like, oh, it's the alien is a metaphor for like getting past your differences and stuff like that. Yeah. But I don't think it's really strong to that point.
That is a much better solution than having Mayweather call them 3/4 of the way through an episode and just ask them what to do. Like if you set up this group of people as not understanding, there being a communication breakdown, and then when you call them back, they're like, no, it's fine. We figured out how to speak your language in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like you're undercutting yourself a little bit there.
Is that real apology fetish too? People who like really want an apology, like what's going on in their minds about that?
I mean, also, you could have. Let's say you have Cretacean.
Cretacins, I think. Yeah, Cretacins.
I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with this one. Let's say you have a Cretacean guy get sucked up by the monster with Archer, right? So you're doing what you're saying, and now you've got this external pressure of the Cretacins and the Enterprise not being able to talk to each other.
Right.
And the Cretacins thinking that's their captain or whoever never made it back to the ship. So now there's some sort of pressure over not being able to communicate with each other. And so Hoshi's job just got harder.
Yep.
She's now has to figure out how to A, talk to the Cretacins, and also B, talk to this alien before the Enterprise gets blown up or something. That's probably more. I mean, adding that in probably wouldn't help because there's already too much going on.
Yeah, you'd have to cut. You'd cut the other character storylines at that point.
There's too much going on, but there's oddly not enough going on. If that makes sense. Because there's too many threads, but not enough is happening in them.
It's what I was saying. Like, if you cut the other characters to fit that in, I think the episode actually becomes more of the boring Enterprise episodes that we've had to this point. Like, I really like the fact that the scenes didn't focus on a character for longer than a couple of minutes. And if you make it just about Archer being stuck with the thing, I mean, I think that. The other thing we're running into now is that because this is Enterprise and it's the 5th Star Trek series, I hear that idea and I go, oh yeah, it's kind of like Darmok, except they're stuck in a spider web.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
You know, and so but I think that you can fix it from being Darmok because the thematic nature of the alien at that point is not something. The alien has a bigger play in that story than the Darmok story, which is really just two characters who can't speak the same language talking to each other.
Right. Yeah. Because I think it depends where you put your focus. Because Darmok is specifically about those two characters not being able to understand each other. But in this one, if you do put your focus on Hoshi,
right,
then it becomes a story about Hoshi trying to figure out the solution to this problem, which is a more of a novel spin to it.
Yeah, the work that needs to be put in to get to a mutual understanding. All right, let's take a break there. We'll play a clip from the episode. We'll come back and read some patron thoughts and give our final thoughts about Vox Sola.
Apologize.
Excuse me?
We will send you the coordinates, but first, you must apologize to us for your offense.
That's the thing. We don't know what we did to offend you.
On your ship, you put food in your mouths.
You mean eat?
Yes, eat.
I don't understand.
It is like mating. It is very offensive to us.
We were just eating. How do you eat?
We eat the same way, but not in the presence of others.
I see. Okay.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to support the show, the best way to do that is patreon.com/thepenskyfile. You go there and a couple dollars a month gets you extra stuff. You get extra podcasts. You get some movie reviews. You get commentary videos. I did one for Sarek. So you basically get to download the episode of Star Trek with me talking over it, just like those those Blu-ray extras for director commentaries. It's the same idea.
Do you do like your own voices? So when Sarek talks, you have him go like, "Son, I love you. I wish we didn't have to fight each other anymore."
I just do the worst director commentary. It was like, "Hey guys, I turned my Netflix on, I press play, and this is the scene that's happening because of that. Apparently this was halfway through the last time I watched it, so we're 27 minutes in right now, and we're just going to keep watching."
As you can see, Sarek has entered from screen left. And,
Funny story. That's the right side of the stage if you're not in the theater. All right. Captain Tier supporters get a special thank you as well at this point. Special thank you goes to original Patron Zero, Christian Pouch, Tark Latif, CT, Mike Burnett, Cardinal Doomsday, Joint Mango, Ben Douglas, Neil Brennan, Kyle Barrett, Matt Samuel Custer, Matt Ross, Nathan Elliott, Eric Johnson, Andrew Sherlock, Grin Santo, Matt Cutler, Tom Hiles, Dwayne Hackett, Sean Jordan Cooper, Russell Elledge, Kevin Reyes, Vault 13 Hero, Stefan Minton, David Beardmore, Darth Mosk, HH28, Mad Courier 6, Jacob123, Matt Houston, Mike Harris, Nick Sergi, Jakey's Gamer, Patrick Seba, Captain Brazen, Kevin Lowry, Eric Antoine, Bradley Killens, Corey Martin, Woodrow, and Rune Vendler. Thank you very much for supporting the show. Thank you very much for listening. Very kind, guys. Thank you.
we're getting close to having to do that thing like where they play, they just roll the credits super fast at the end of the show to make sure they get everybody.
Yes, right. When you're on a network TV and you got a show coming up that you have to get there in 17 seconds, but you've got 12 hours of credits.
When you just finished The Mummy Returns and you have to go right into Shanghai Noon.
Yes.
You can't play the credits, so you just got to speed through them really fast.
Or it's just the second showing of Shawshank. You finish Shawshank, let's watch Shawshank again. All right, let's go through patron comments. If you're a patron that's $5 and up level, you get to leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes. We're on a little bit of a time crunch here, Clay, so I'll try to get through these. Matt Ross says, Vox Sola, finally getting back to a sci-fi story, a Latin name too. It's more than you would expect for an alien encounter with a disturbing Aliens movie vibe. Even the language errors were interesting, and Hoshi's trying to figure out what the heck went wrong, but not chafing at T'Pol on her lack of confidence moments. The insult makes the Cretaceans different, although human-looking. Mayweather's apology delivery is very stiff. It's cool you get to see other crew members and their realization that something isn't right. The alien spiderweb monster is an interesting and different idea, and the shared consciousness is a nice twist. Water polo, not so much. Reed's idea for a force field is another fan service checklist item, yet believable. Phlox's objection is not. Their ship is at risk to the point where they all could have been taken over. So I say, shut up, Doctor. You're not a line officer. The solution is not shooting or fire, but the politely figuring out the alien needed a taxi ride home. So you have to wonder if this was all a ruse for when the blobs try to take over the galaxy. More fun than the last several, so 3 tendrils out of 5. Latte Librarian says, Hoshi finally gets to do something interesting while she and T'Pol bond over math language. They missed an opportunity to explore a theme with the alien creature, like a found family trope or how to hold on to individuality in the face of a dominant culture. Having Hoshi and T'Pol be caught and figuring out the language and the respect they have for each other while being held by the alien would have been interesting too. There just wasn't enough tension in the episode. It needed something to spice it up. 3 globs of alien goop out of 5. Stefan Minton says, a truly bizarre alien with a language based on higher mathematics and musical distortions. T'Pol in command and Hoshi faced with a challenge that will determine the fates of her crewmates. A crew that must remember that its mission is to seek out new life and not destroy it at the first sign of trouble. This episode has a lot going for it, and yet it still feels very average. The ingredients are there, but it does not come together to form anything special. I don't terribly mind that, though. It's a competently made hour of television, nothing more, nothing less. 3 life forms, soon to become 1 out of 5. Next one is Kyle Barrett says, a cross between a monster movie and those emails I keep getting for supplements that make you produce more cum. I assume Malcolm is so pissed off during this episode because he wanted to be captured by the pellucid creature. Kyle's using thesaurus.com on me at this point. Pellucid creature and accidentally get some in his mouth, yet keep being denied. The episode begins well with some...
Kyle's using thesaurus.com. But I feel like he's
got multiple tabs.
He's got some other websites he's going to as well. based on the theme that's running through his comments lately.
If you're looking for the right supplement to help you, Kyle, I've got a guy. I'll give you his number. The episode begins well with some fun day-in-the-life scenes, but it soon heads downhill. Are they really still filming water polo in 4.3/480 next century? Despite Roxanne Dawson's competent direction and the noticeably decent music, the episode looks too silly to take seriously. There's no payoff to Archer and Trip being able to read each other's minds, and the message of the piece is basic as they come. However, there are some welcome tensions between crew members, particularly Phlox and Reed, even though it once again highlights Kading's miscasting. Oh, and the alien screeching at the end made my dog go crazy. I don't think I can give this any more than one bukakied crew member out of 5. Or 2, wow. I'm sorry, 2 bukakied crew members out of 5.
Wow.
Harsh on Vox Sola. Woodrow Wilson. I was just listening to a podcast
Hold
about
on, everybody
Woodrow.
shut up. The president
He's like, outside of the black people in this episode, this was a great episode of television. Thank you, Woodrow. Just Woodrow says, Wages of Fear, a film about exiles from occupied Europe who find purpose and salvation by risking it. Maybe this is Woodrow Wilson. A great parable for space exploration. This episode defines the mission very well. Force alone does not work. It has to be tied up with ethics, conflict resolution, and the ultimate goal of understanding. I also love the flourishes of purple on the Cretaceans' makeup. Most Trek aliens have bland tones, whereas in nature, a single vibrant stripe, fluorescence, or patterns are just as common. A fundamentally Star Trek episode and well done. 3.5 out of 5. Is that it? I guess that's it. Did I? No. What did I do? I skipped Christian. Christian Pouch says, Vox Sola, did they go into so much detail about the water polo stuff because nobody in America cares much about the sport they deliberately picked for Archer? Despite the oddness of the scene, I like their friendship. Trip holding onto the recording to cheer up his friend and hanging out with pretzels and beer. Never got that in TNG. The rest of the episode is fine. The stakes are not escalated in a satisfactory way. The steps to solve the problem are not connected with any kind of character progression or discovery. Hoshi being defensive with T'Pol for the 3rd or 4th time doesn't count. The alien is just an alien that we'll never see again and don't learn anything from. Even the mind linking isn't used for anything interesting. 2 water polo / tentacle hentai crossovers out of 5.
I think a marking of this episode sort of being all over the place is that not only is there extensive conversation about the rules and strategy of water polo, they also talk about very specifically about the wages of fear a bunch of times.
Yeah.
To the point where they're like caught up in that web and Rostov or whatever his name is like, it's actually a really great movie about people who have to bring dynamite into it was actually remade in the 70s by Billy Friedkin. It was called Sorcerer. It's actually a really great movie. It was his follow-up to The Exorcist and it bombed, but I've always loved the original.
It was that scene is funny where he's talking about that. It showed to me sometimes.
It also has that element of like when you're trying to when you're like really into movies and then you're talking to a girl who honestly couldn't care less and you're like, no, let's go see Wages of Fear, and she's like, I would rather not. And it's like, but it's about dynamite in a truck, you're gonna love it.
It made me
basically most of my interactions in college.
It made me think about it's just, you can tell that the writers aren't comedy writers like that. I think that joke is kind of cute in and of itself if you had ended that scene on the guy just going, Captain, are we going to get to see that movie next week once we get out of this? You go like, okay, that's a decent enough joke. The writers continue that for about 30 seconds where he's like, no, seriously, Jonathan, like, what day next week are we going to be watching this movie? And Archer's just kind of like, I
need to get the time off now. My superior is really a stickler about that stuff.
It's my weekend with the kid.
If when they were doing the mind link thing, Archer and Trip are both like, man, he's right. Wages of Fear is a really good movie. I'm getting all of the memories that he has of it. Wow, we should all go see that once we get out of this situation. And it's not even a movie that like thematically really makes sense to anything. It's a great movie, but it's a really random one to pick.
While they're in the web, all the dialogue between them should just be like, well, I hope that Reed can get here. And it's like, God, who's thinking about T'Pol's ass again? Who's doing this? Can we focus, gentlemen?
Or like they're just not saying anything, and Trip is like, you fell face first into her boobs?
Don't come in yet. We're still stuck in this. It's the South Park. A spooky ghost came in here to Paul. Don't worry. I missed a comment, so final comment. Point Extra G says, I like seeing T'Pol in command every now and then. Having Archer and Trip out of commission gives the others a bit to do. I find the scene with Mayweather and the alien captain oddly humorous. I don't think that him trying to describe the creature was supposed to be funny, but it comes across that way. And I guess everyone else was busy, so Travis just offers the apology. And the aliens just learned English and are like, what? You couldn't figure out an alien language? Thank you, patrons, for your thoughts about this one. Vox Sola. Everyone seemed fairly average to middlingly low.
Yeah.
I'm going to surprise them and go average to middlingly high. This is a high 3 for me, but it's a good 3, I think, in this case.
I'm in the same. My first instinct was to give it a 4, but I think that was sort of like when your dog finally does the trick you've been asking him to do, but he doesn't really do it entirely correctly.
Right. He's just happy for the effort.
Yeah, like he finally made the motion to do it, but he didn't really complete it. So I was a little bit over positive, I think, because I was just sort of like, oh, good. They're finally kind of pulling some of this stuff together and they're telling a narrative story with their characters and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, when you break it down, it's obviously not perfect. It is probably, like you said, probably in my top 3 of the, if not 3-5 of the.
One of the better episodes, certainly, of this season.
I think so. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to go high 3 as well.
Yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed it. It's just, it does have some problems, but I liked the progress here. Like you're happy seeing this level of progress and think it's worth it. So
yeah, definitely.
Thank you guys very much for listening. We're on a short time, so we got to run, but you can check out the next episode. It'll be out in a couple of days. You can support the show at patreon.com/The Penske File if you want to do that. Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we go?
We got a new Rotten Heart Picture Show out this week. We're talking about the Iranian vampire movie A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. And then next week, we've got a new Badass episode. I don't remember what it is, but I'm sure it's a good one. I think it might be Demon's Quest. I think it's the first appearance of Ra's al Ghul is next week.
You guys can check that out at thepenskyfile.com, where you can stay on the YouTube channel if you're there for that stuff. So thank you very much. Vox Sola, we both were fairly positive on that one. Not perfect, but a pretty solid little season, little ending of a season episode, and some spooky ghost aliens in it too. Yeah, I don't think I really. We didn't talk about the ending scene with the planet, but I feel like Enterprise both has strange openings and strange endings to me in a lot of ways. Like a lot of them are just, the endings are just like hard cut to the ship in the distance, flies off, and that's it. Not that it's a bad ending, but it's like, oh, they really like those final shots of the ship flying off. It never ends on just a character's face or anything like that. It's just kind of a small detail.
Yeah, I liked the giant alien thing. I think it brings up some questions as to how that thing ended up on the other ship to begin with. But I like the idea. But I also, that's another thing where it feels like that should be a little bit more thematically relevant, and it's really not.
Yes. Yeah.
I did like,
especially when they focus on it at the end, where it's like you're supposed to be surprised that it's this huge planet-wide thing, but it's kind of neat, but it doesn't mean anything at the same time.
Yeah, I did like that it was probably the least humanoid alien they've run into. And very, very different, and very alien, which was nice.
All right, guys, thank you very much for listening. We'll be back with the next episode, which I think is, I'm going to click the button and tell you what it is. It is Fallen Hero. So we'll be back with Fallen Hero in a couple days. Until then, see ya.